My dearest sister Catherine, I pray this letter finds you well, and that your husband Robert and the twins Louis and Lawrence are still the joys of your heart that I remember them to be. I truly hope that this letter can make its way to you safely across state borders to your home in Philadelphia in time for Christmas. I know quite a bit has happened since the last time I wrote, so I wanted to let you know how we are doing here in Nashville. Life has changed so much in so few years. I remember when John proposed and asked me to move to Tennessee with him. I was so terrified, but at the same time I was so relieved when Father agreed to our marriage. I was content to follow my beloved wherever his work as a telegraph operator would take him, be it a beautiful city like Charlotte or the frontier lands along the Mississippi River. Nashville was not nearly as uncivilized as I expected, although lacking in some of the culture of Philadelphia, such as opera houses and art galleries. There are some fine businesses here and wonderfully kind people, too. We were quite comfortable as John's salary afforded us our own house and plot of land on the edge of the city, a small orchard, and all the niceties of cultured living. We even hired a freed Negro woman, Betty, to keep the house so that I could spend more time on my needlework. Life was pleasant, and I was growing fond of spending time getting to know our neighbors and the gracious way of Southern living. Everything changed that awful November day in 1860 when the presidential election divided the nation. The people of Tennessee kept level heads in the arguments over states' rights and voted for Senator John Bell, who suggested that the nation should abide strictly by the Constitution as written and not allow the issues of slavery to ruin the relations between the states. It seems to me that such a peacemaker should have been the wise choice compared to Breckinridge, who wanted no limitations on slavery, and Douglas, who wanted free choice of new states on legalizing slavery. So, who won the votes? The lukewarm Republican from Illinois, who neither wanted to ban slavery or support it, but rather let it die out slowly. Nashville was all fluttering with gossip when the news that South Carolina had seceded from the Union arrived. My husband John was in the office tending the sounder when the news came over the wire. On February 9th of 1861, great men from across the state voted on whether the lawmakers of Tennessee should discuss secession, and the majority decided against taking such action. In April, Governor Harris called a meeting of the General Assembly, and they went behind closed doors to discuss secession. For nearly 2 weeks, we wondered what they were saying in there, and we got our answer on May 6th. Tennessee was going to separate from the Union. Once the announcement was made that Tennessee was going to secede from the Union, Nashville had a flurry of activity to prepare for war. There were speeches and musical displays rousing the crowds into a fervor, and patriotism ran high as everyone was proud to defend the South from invasion. Preparation for war took many forms. Men signed up for militias and did practice drills daily. Businesses even closed early to allow them to do so. The military stocked food, clothing, and armaments in warehouses. Women were not excluded. Many formed women's auxiliary groups to support the troops. These groups gathered fabric and made uniforms, bandages, and flags. I participated in the flag sewing group because my needlework skills are handy. Soldiers were sent off with great fanfare, and we expected that the war would be over in just a few short months. Surely, the federal government would see the folly in attacking their own citizens on home soil and call the whole thing off? But no, months dragged on and got more depressing when the news of each defeat, of each slain soldier. It was a devastating event when we had to bury the body of General Felix Zollicoffer. That was one of the first shocking losses that we heard about in Nashville, and many came to mourn his death as his coffin laid in the state capitol before the funeral. In early February of 1862, the news came through the telegraph office that Fort Henry and Fort Donelson had fallen, and it would be only a matter of time before the Union Army was knocking on Nashville's doors. General Albert Sidney Johnston was right when he had visited Nashville on his way to Bowling Green, Kentucky, only a couple of months prior, and insisted that we needed more fortifications. I think the worst day in history was Sunday the 16th of February, 1862. Word circulated quickly around Nashville that General Grant and the Union Army would be invading the city at any moment. Panic-stricken citizens were dismissed from church early and rushed home to pack or fortify their defenses. Throngs of frantic people left the city, crowding the roadways on horses, wagons, and coaches. A special train departed with the governor and other officials, headed for the safety of Memphis. On Monday, there was still no sign of invading troops, but those of us who had to stay behind scarcely dared to hope that they would not arrive. John wanted me to go to Memphis, but I did not want to go without him, and he stayed loyal to his post by the telegraph machines. A depressing caravan of our brave soldiers, some of them wounded, trudged out of the city to head to new positions in the South. The sense of doom hung heavily in the air as we all realized how defenseless we were. I heard later that there was a disturbance downtown when General Floyd decided to stop dispensing the military stores to the public, which had been done to keep them out of the hands of Union forces. Betty told me she had seen crowds of rough men pushing and looting what they thought they deserved, and it got out of hand to the point that the general gave up trying to control them. There was such a rush to hoard precious supplies that I think they just lost their heads with greed. Colonel Forrest arrived and was finally able to subdue them. The battle for Nashville was short and painful. Union forces tramped into the city with delight as our brave men made their escape out of the area. Those prideful Northern soldiers marched right up to the Capitol building and raised Old Glory upon the flagpole, officially proclaiming Nashville to be Union-controlled. A few citizens were glad to see them and proudly cheered with their own United States flags, but most people just stayed inside and scowled at the invaders. Nashville has been occupied by Union troops ever since that fateful day, and the city has a strange peace about it that is overshadowed by tension. Mayor Cheatham and General Buell met and made joint proclamations that the Union forces were to leave the citizens untouched and that we could resume business as usual. I have felt relatively safe going about my tasks downtown, shopping and visiting the telegraph office to see John. He has been working harder than ever before and thankfully excluded from service because of his work, but the telegraph company refuses to give him raises commensurate with his increased workload. One unexpected turn of events in Nashville recently has been the legalization of prostitution, something I never thought could happen here. The Union Army decided to crack down on the practice as it was demoralizing and spreading diseases, so Nashville's Provost Marshal Lieutenant Colonel George Spaulding sent all the seedy women of the city away up the river. Word came from Louisville and Cincinnati that the government there refused the women to disembark, and federal government ordered the ship back to Nashville. Instead of trying to send them away again, Spaulding decided to arrange a certification program that requires harlots to pass regular health checkups. The whole business is a sordid affair, and I am horrified at how audacious some of those women have become, blatantly putting their wares on display and hiding behind their official documents. I worry about John being influenced by their lewd behavior as he walks back and forth to work. Even though it has been relatively peaceful in the city, life has been getting harder on everyone. The prices of food have more than tripled, with bacon costing $3 a pound and corn going as high as $5 a bushel. Some things are difficult or impossible to get now, as supply lines keep getting cut off from battles all over Dixie. I have expressed my concern to Betty that we may have to let her go, as costs keep rising and John's salary has not, but she begged me to let her continue working for reduced pay. The Negroes have not been treated poorly by the Union people, but they have refused to provide for them unless they relocate to the contraband camps. I feel for her people, but I also don't know how anything could be done differently. Father always used to say that slavery is evil, and every man should have the right to care for his family and earn a living. But I wonder what he would say about the blood that is being shed over such issues. Is that not also evil? We are all praying for a resolution to this time of turmoil and death. This war that has taken so many of our brothers and sons, and lasted far longer than expected, must end soon, or I fear that this nation will have no one left to mourn the dead. Now that the Confederate Army of Tennessee has been soundly defeated by Major General George Thomas, I feel that the war may finally end soon. I hear that General Sherman is marching to Savannah and that we may see the Union Army rally the troops to a decisive victory. For better or worse, I pray that the fighting will end soon and wise men may discover the ways of peace once again. With all my love, Eliza.